the samurai became ronin. They were without masters. So that's what they basically are. They're masterless samurais. I'm not her master. I'm her hunting partner. She doesn't consider me her boss.
Right.
And then I've had a banshee, and banshees were the Irish witches that came and took your soul when you died. And they're very vocal. They would scream. Irish people are were very superstitious about certain things. Loki, a little male Harris hawk like this I had. Loki was Thor's half brother. He was the Norse god of mischief. And Loki could get in and out of things. He was like the Houdini of Harris hawks. These jesses, he would get out of them. I'd have him leashed up to something. I'd get there, and he'd just be sitting there looking at me, and everything would be laying on the ground. He'd get out of stuff, untie things. I mean, he was amazing.
Didn't see cool, Trip. Don't chew on that, please.
What do you think, Trip? Was it worth the wait?
Can we bring the pug back out so you can show it what that
You want to see how fast they are? Reed's going, yeah. No way. I wouldn't. So, anyway, the sport's called Falconry. It's about 3,000 years old. It was started in northern China and then moved through via the Silk Route and Marco Polo and all of his explorations through northern India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, through the Middle East, and then eventually back through into Europe with the Crusaders, the Christian Crusaders moving back and forth from Jerusalem into Europe. And it became the sport of kings in Europe for 800 years. Mostly practiced by the aristocracy in Europe. Still pretty popular in a lot of countries in Europe. England, Scotland, Germany. Not so much in France. Some in northern Italy. And then eventually it was actually practiced in the United States after the early part of the 20th century, but not by very many people. It's probably maybe a dozen. And then after World War II, American GIs saw it in Europe and brought it back to the United States. Actually, one of my other favorite movies is we were talking about this earlier, is Errol Flynn in Robin Hood. And there's a scene in the very beginning that they have just since put back into the movie. And there are two Harris hawks and a falcon sitting on a perch, just as Errol Flynn walks into the big room with the deer on his back. That scene when he walks in the beginning, just before that, a few seconds before that. So that was 1938. So there were people practicing falconry with Harris hawks in 1938 in America. In the 60s, it became illegal in the United States to have a bird of prey like this in your possession. There were international trade laws that we were trying to have passed with other countries, and one of them had to do with the movement of it was a very small phrase in this treaty that we had with European countries. But falconry became illegal for a short period of time. In 1972, they passed the Endangered Species Act, and all of these birds became protected. So the federal government got into the license business. And I have to have, right now I have a federal license, a state license, and I have to buy a hunting license as well. Although the federal government's about to get out of it, as soon as the state of Virginia can get their act together and set up the necessary computer system that they need to run the program themselves. There's only about 150 of us in the state of Virginia. Right now they're actively flying birds. It's about 3,000 in the whole country. And I saw it when I was a little older than Trip the very first time. And drove my parents crazy for about 6 months. And in those days, in the early 60s, you could look in the back of Boy Scout magazine, and there was an ad that would say, send us $10, we'll send you a hawk in the mail.
Wow.
So I did.
Did you hear that?
And about 3 weeks later, this box shows up at the house, and my mother said, what's that? I said, well, I sent for something. She said, you did? I said, yeah. I was 9. And we opened it up, and there was a marsh hawk, which is now called a northern harrier. It was about her size, I guess. And they're not very good for falconry. They're kind of pretty birds, but they're not very good for falconry.
$10, huh?
Yeah, $10. That included shipping. That was everything, $10. Cost us $2.50 to send it back, which I had to do 3 days later. Dad said, "You're not going to, you can't train a dog." So we sent it back, and I just continued to read things for years and years and years. And then eventually I bumped into somebody about 25 years later, and the guy said he was a falconer. And he took me to his house, and he showed me this giant red tail that he had. that he had taken out of the nest as a little baby, and he was a biology teacher in a local high school, and he raised it in his biology class. And so he knew my brothers, and he knew my brother's kids, and so we became good friends, and then he introduced me to a bunch of other people. And then right before we moved to Virginia, I was all set to take my licensing exam, and that's what I have to take, or as a falconer, you have to take a national exam, do a 2-year apprenticeship with another falconer, and then you're out on your own. And I did that 25 years ago. So now I'm out on my own a little bit. But I was all set to take the exam in New York, and we moved to Virginia, so it took me about another year to find everybody here in the state and do my apprenticeship and do all that stuff. And now my license says that I'm a master falconer. Woo! Doesn't really mean a whole lot to me because I haven't done a lot of things in falconry that I actually told the state of Oregon that I didn't deserve it, and they said, "Oh no, you have to have it." Okay, but it does give me a little bit of flexibility in the licensing laws and stuff. I can do some things that other people can't, but I don't think I'm really going to do them. I'm not going to get a golden eagle or a bald eagle. I'm just not going to do stuff like that. She weighs a little more than 2 pounds right now. She weighs 36 ounces. Golden eagles weigh 10 pounds. So right now, if she were to move this foot out here and clamp down really hard, she could close off the circulation in my finger, and my finger would go numb. And she weighs 2 pounds. So think about what a 10-pound bird, whose feet are bigger than my hands and stands about this tall, when they clamp down really hard, all the bones in your hand go like a walnut. So when I train her to come back to my fist to a piece of meat. You don't do that with eagles. You either put a rack on the roof of your car and put something up on the car and let them come back to that. Or a lot of guys call the bird back and they just land on their hand and then they throw a white rat. Use these pen-raised white rats. And you train them basically the way they train drug dogs. I don't know if you've ever seen this, where they bring the dog in to sniff the lockers or whatever, and the dog sniffs, and then finally they find something, and they throw a white towel on the floor, and the dog goes bananas. They're not after the drugs, they're after that towel, because they stuff drugs in the towel during their training, and they think that's the end to get all, is to get a hold of that towel. So basically that's what you're doing with the white rat. So the behavioral conditioning part can take 6 or 8 weeks, and then so you get them. I got her, she was exactly the same size as she is right now. Her feathers were a different color. But at 10 weeks, they're ready to fly and hunt. And it takes about another, like I said, it took me about 8 weeks to train her. I was a little lazy. But I had 2 of them at the same time. So, you train one day and one the next day. So it took a little longer. And then the idea was that they were sisters from the same clutch. They'd come out from the same mom and dad. They lived together. And then I got them. Is that I wanted to hunt them together. And in the wild, these Harris hawks hunt in gangs. They live in packs of up to 25 or 30. And they hunt just like a wolf pack. And there's an alpha male and an alpha female. And the alpha female runs the whole show. He's in charge. And they hunt in packs. So it's really pretty exciting. And I'd seen videos of it. And then when Donna and I moved cross country a couple years ago, we actually got to see wild gangs of Harris hawks hunting in West Texas. It was a lot of fun. Right on the side of the highway. It was pretty cool. So one bird will fly in and chase a rabbit into a bush, and the other ones will he'll stay on the ground and chase the rabbit out the other side of the bush. And when the rabbit runs out the other side of the bush, there's 2 or 3 more waiting. The rabbit didn't see them, and it's over.
And what do you hunt with her?
Rabbits and squirrels, birds, and duck, quail, and hogs.
I was going to say pugs.
Just about anything that they will chase. They really don't, especially the ones that have been hand raised. They really don't get that they have a really small prey spectrum. They think that they can attack anything, and they will kind of like shoot first and ask questions later. So this bird, this one right here, pretty regularly has hit my 100-pound Labrador, and he just kind of sits there and looks at me and waits for me to show up and pull her feet out of his back or his nose or his ears.
Yikes.
So she hasn't really hurt him very badly right now because Labradors have that real loose skin and she just kind of balls it up. And she scratched him a little bit, but he's been all right. He doesn't yell.
Does the hawk think it's going to kill the dog?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. You bet.
What about his eyes?
Yeah, she's gotten close to his eyes. She actually grabbed my Weimaraner, who weighs 85 pounds, and she got real close to his eyes. But he was able to shake her off, and then I was able to get a hold of her. And this all happened, they were out running around, and she got loose and then just chased them, about 100 yards out into the farm. It wasn't something I'd really planned. The idea was that the dogs were going to hunt with me, and I was going to use them to do all of the flushing work, and then I could keep my eyes on her. But I don't think for Taka that's not going to work. It might work for Puka, because she doesn't seem to care about the dogs. And some of them they just don't like dogs. I don't really. No one can. I've asked 100 people, and no one's been able to give me an answer that makes any sense.
And this one apparently doesn't.
Yeah, she doesn't like dogs much, or she thinks it's something that she's supposed to eat.
Do you have to spend more time with this one then? Or are they about where you want them both to be in terms of hunting?
Yeah, she's actually on the top of her game right now. She is just hell-bent for glory. I'm actually having to spend more time with the other one, getting that one up to speed, but I don't think I'll ever be able to hunt them together. And if I do, it'll be a year or two from now. Because for her, the whole hunting instinct seems to be just so strong that she will just attack anything. Leaves blowing across the field, she'll hit those. There was a piece of grass going like this in the wind one day, she whacked that. If it's moving, she's going to attack it. So, I just think that she's going to be a solo. I'm going to always have to hunt her alone. And I might next year, and it depends on what, if I can convince Donna that this is a really good idea. There's two things I always wanted to hunt them as a gang, together. And I got to do that last fall. For about 3 or 4 months, I hunted her and her sister together, and it was absolutely amazing. It was just crazy good. I've always wanted to get a barn owl, so I have to think about that. And then I might, if Puka turns out to be a good bird, I'm thinking about getting a male and being able to hunt Puka and a male and female together. And then this one will always be solo.
If you get the owl, would Taka attack the owl?
Well, no. I would want the owl to hunt with. I just think barn owls are beautiful. And I've always
but you wouldn't let them.
No, they couldn't. They can't be together.
Right.
Yeah. They always have to be separated. If Puka was here right now and they were side by side, they would kill each other. She would kill Puka.
Really?
Wow. It's just for her. I'm in charge. She would be the dominant female in that gang. If they were living in a group, that 25 or 30, there's no doubt in my mind that this is the dominant female. And if anybody gave her any garbage, she would just kill them. It'd just be over.
Wow.
And that's just it's her attitude. It's who she is, and you can't change it. Unfortunately, I've tried.
And it's DNA.
It's in her thing that she's got to be in charge. Now to see them hunting together, it's so exciting because one of them, the squirrel's running up the tree, and one of them comes from over here and misses the squirrel and just barks flying off the tree, and the squirrel runs around the other side of the tree and just holds on tight. She would go up into this tree here, and the squirrel's on the backside, and then the second one is over there, and that tree can come over and take the squirrel right off the tree.
The squirrel never knew.
Never knew it was there. So it's really a lot of fun. It's just a hoot. And that's what I've always wanted to do, and I finally did it. And she just didn't want to do it for very long.
So then how do you, you just hold meat and they come back to you?
You want to see? Let's see if we can get her to do it.
My husband loves this. He's probably sitting out in the woods not seeing a darn thing, and he could have learned all kinds of cool stuff. Yeah.
So I feed her these are day-old chicks that I buy.
She is going to town.
From a farm in Maryland, and they cull out the male chicks the first day. They kill them. they euthanize them the first day because all the chicken that you eat from Kroger or Harris Teeter are all females. So they get rid of the males except for a couple as roosters, and then the rest of them go away. So they euthanize them and freeze them, and they sell them to zoos and people like me. So I buy 400 or 500 at a time. They come frozen to the house, and then I thaw them out. So the nutrition's really good because the yolk sac is still there, and there's huge amounts of nutrition for them. And it's actually the reason why her feet are yellow, and this area around her mouth and her nose is called a cere, and the rim of her eyes is bright yellow. There's a chemical in the egg yolk and in the feathers of the chick that turn their skin yellow. Her skin, when I got her, was the same color as mine, and then it turns bright yellow. And it took what, a month? But the nutrition is really, really good for them. It's great.
Is she on cholesterol medicine?
She's not on cholesterol medicine. They don't need to be, because all they eat is meat. They don't eat any vegetables.
A lot of egg yolk.
What?
She's like,
Yeah, you know the chick is in the bag, don't you? Right. You see the top, and you know the chick is in here. Right? Camouflage or not, you know it's in there, don't you? See, she would fly back and grab the bag. So it's all that conditioning thing. You get them used to doing the same thing every day, every time, always, and they just. Wow. There are guys that actually out west in Wyoming and Montana that train the birds to come back to the roofs of their cars because it's the tallest thing in the whole area. You might be in an area, with a falcon that's up in the air 700 or 800 feet. He can see 3 miles that way, and he can see an area 3 miles around. So they may fly 2 or 3 miles away, but this red vehicle sitting in the middle of the field is a beacon to have them come back. And some guys carry red bandanas, and they wave red bandanas, and the falcon can see this motion, and then they come back to it. True falconry. This is what I do is called dirt hawking, or in German it's called Austranging, which means short winging. And if you look, she has short wings. They look pretty big because you don't see one side by side. Falcons are generally smaller than her, and they have long, very long pointed wings, and they're built for speed. They have long, narrow tails for maneuverability, but they're generally very small. So that's actually true falconry. What I do is called short winging. And the sport's the same, the training's the same, the birds just hunt differently. I've never had a falcon. I don't know if I ever will. They're very, very high maintenance, temperamental, and you think about it, she's never more than about 100 yards away from me at any one time when I'm in the woods. Falcons can be 3 miles over there, and they put telemetry devices on their tails, and they have these little gadgets. They can find them. I'm just not that. I want to see her. I want to watch everything she's doing. She kills a falcon kills a duck 1.5 miles that way. I wasn't there. I don't know what's happening. And now how do I get her back? She's driving around all night long looking for him. It's not what I want to do.
Tell us about the weight, how you have to monitor their weight.
So they're only going to hunt. They're apex predators. They're predators on the top of the food list, or the top of the food chain. So they're only hunting when they're hungry. So you watch these shows with lions, and the lions go out and kill, like we were talking, I guess Charlie talking this morning about a Cape buffalo. They go out and kill a Cape buffalo. The animal weighs 2,000 pounds, and lions weigh about 400 or 500 pounds. So they gorge themselves for a day and a half, and then they go sit in the shade for a week. They don't eat like that every day. They do it once a week or every 10 days. So they're only going to hunt when they're hungry. Their weight drops down. So in order to get her to come back to my fist regularly for a piece of meat, I have to know what her hunting weight is. So during the training period, every day, every time I'm in the beginning of the training and at the end of the training, I weigh her. So I know that when I have a piece of meat on my hand and she flies from that railing to my hand, just like that, at 34 ounces, she does it every time. At 36, 37, 38 ounces, she kind of sits there and looks and says, maybe now. Yeah, okay, I'm coming. That's not what I want. I want her to do this. Likewise, on the other end of the scale, if she's 30 ounces, she's also going to sit right there because she's weak and she's nervous about using any energy to get over there because I may not make it. And then what happens when I get there? I'm going to be so weak I can't eat. Then I'm going to die. I'm going to be on the ground and something else, so they get nervous. When they're in the middle, they react to my hand and they do everything just when I want them to do it. It's part of the behavioral conditioning. It's also in Arabic. It's called yarak, and it means hunting weight. And their They're very sharp. They're right on. So before I take her out any place or do anything with her, I weigh her. And if she's in that 34, 35 ounce range, I'm gone. I just take her. If she's 37, 38, I'm going to let her sit on a perch, that day. And at some point, she's going to cough up parts of what she ate the day before. And it's going to look like that. Actually, that's about half of one. And basically what that is all of the fur and nails and beak and bone that she couldn't digest. So they cough it back up. They have two stomachs. She has one up here called the crop. All birds have them. Chickens have them, and that's why you feed chickens grit. They swallow the pebbles or the rocks, and it sits in their crop, and when they eat seeds, it grinds, just like a grist mill, it grinds the seed up, and then they digest everything, and they cough up this milky-looking substance every couple days. And then they eat more grit. So what they do is they swallow the mouse whole, or whatever they eat big chunks of stuff. She would swallow just about that whole chick in one gulp.
Oh my God.
And then in about a day, some of the feathers, some of the bones, the beak, the claws, she would spit back up because she can't digest it. And then everything else would have been digested, moved into her second stomach, and then down the rest of the canal. So that way they can eat something and get back up into a tree and get away from predators, and they don't have to be sitting on the ground all the time. Obviously, as we know through evolution, certain birds are now flightless, and they sit on the ground and they hunt ostrich. They're running around on the ground. At one point, they could fly. They were also a lot bigger at one point. Some birds were never able to fly. They got wings, but they were never able to use them. This guy is what's left over from the velociraptor, which is a small 6-foot dinosaur 65 million years ago. And this is what they turned into. This is my conjecture, but when you see how they hunt, you see what they look like, they see how they live. Velociraptors lived in gangs. They hunted as a wolf pack. They did all the same kind of things that these guys do, and these are the only raptors in the world that live in family gangs and hunt this way. I don't need to be an archaeologist or a paleontologist or whatever to figure it out. It's pretty simple. They're probably velociraptors. They still have scales. Look at her feet. It's a lizard. Only they have feathers and wings now.
Does she have a personality?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And hers is kind of like, Donna, what did you think? What's her personality like?
Well, she's really aggressive. I don't know what.
She's like Mike Tyson in the ring.
Bite your ear off.
She is the most aggressive bird you've had.
The aggressive harris hawk, for sure. Yeah.
But has she ever been aggressive towards people?
No.
Any
she's grabbed me. She's grabbed my hand. She'll strike at you when there's food involved. If I put that chick in my hand right here, she doesn't see my fingers. She sees that chick, and she's going to tear my fingers apart. All of them will do that. But she's not aggressive towards people, but she's aggressive towards anything else.
Dogs.
Dogs.
Dogs in particular.
Yeah. Rabbits. Squirrels. She's really hell-bent on squirrels right now.
You guys probably couldn't have a cat.
We do. We have 2 cats.
And they know exactly how far they have to stay away.
Yeah, they learned it pretty early.
Yeah. The cats are much smarter than the dogs. Yeah.
But, they do have personalities. I have one that was, as soon as she heard, I would pull up in the driveway in the evening and open my truck, and I would say, "Hey, Banshee, how you doing?" As soon as she heard my voice. Or if I was on the cell phone or something, she would start squawking. Wherever she was, she would start squawking.
Hello.
There we go. Now you're happy.
It's like casting. Don't stand behind someone when they're casting. Don't stand behind a hall camera.
Cool. I call my husband a bird whisperer because we go. Well, it's random. We'll go to the pet store, and they just all, if they can talk, they talk to him. If they just love him, and then we've had all these bird stories outside. We go outside, and this female bird comes to him and is talking to him. I need help, and he's trying to figure out what's wrong, and her baby had fallen out of the nest.
This is a lifestyle. This isn't just a hobby or a sport. You have to, obviously, we go on vacations. If we take a 3-day weekend, we take the birds with us. we leave the dogs home, we leave the birds with us, and we've been up in Washington, D.C. at a hockey tournament, sitting on the tailgate of my truck in a parking lot of a hotel in downtown D.C. with 50 people standing around while I'm feeding the birds. I mean, it becomes part of your life. You just do it. And if you, I mean, I love it so much, and I've been doing it so long that, it becomes part of your everyday life. And obviously, I have to take care of her 365 days a year. I don't get to oil her and put her in a closet like a gun or a bow and arrow or something. And I'm not, I have a lot of guns, and I still like gun hunting, but it's a different way to go about it. I think I'm a little bit more in tune with what's going on, and I'm not hunting for myself. I'm watching a wild bird hunt for her, on her own. Where do you think you're going? You going back in the box? Is that what you really want?
So when she goes and catches a rabbit or a squirrel, you let her eat it.
Well, I
don't take it away from her.
In that bag, in that camo bag, I have this purple old dish towel, and I let her hold on to it really hard, and I may help her kill it. I want her prey to die quickly and honorably, So she's going to have to struggle with a big rabbit for 15 minutes and suffocate it. The rabbit's suffering, and I don't want that. So I'll help her kill it real quick. Or a squirrel, if it's a squirrel, I want it dead right away because you can see these little scars on the tips of her tarsi.
From squirrels.
And these nicks, and those are all from squirrels. And I have friends that are, hawks are missing toes, a leg. They'll bite a leg right off. So they're nasty. So as soon as they get a hold of a squirrel, I'm right there on the ground, and I want to finish it. I carry some specialized things to do that. And then I let her, hold on to it. They think they killed it. Everything's doing great. And then I'll, maybe a couple minutes later, I'll cover it up with a towel because they're exhausted. I mean, the fight is dramatic. And then once you cover it up and they can't see it, they're the perfect existentialists. If it's not right in front of them, it doesn't exist. So they look down and they go, "What happened? Oh man, it got away again." And I pull out a piece of chick and I put it over here, and she jumps right off of it. And I pick up the squirrel and put it in my bag, and we go on.
There's no sense of smell.
No, they have very poor sense of smell. The hearing is probably not as good as ours.
All eyes.
Their sense of smell isn't nearly as good as ours. Now, some birds. Well, they're not really considered birds of prey, and they're not raptors because they don't hunt with their feet. But vultures have an incredible sense of smell. And when you see them circling like this, obviously this cyclone of warm air is coming up off the earth, and that's what they're sitting in. It's called kettling. And the scent from a dead animal is up in the air with it, and that's how they find their prey. So that's how they know where the dead deer is on the side of the road to go eat. Then once they get close, they can obviously see it. Their eyesight's pretty good too. But these guys, their sense of smell is not really very good.
How about their vision?
Their vision is way, way better than ours. If she's on the goalpost in an end zone in a football field, she can see a cricket in the grass in the other end zone and know whether or not she wants to eat it. A cricket, an inch long. They say golden eagles from 800 feet in the air can see a rabbit twitch its nose. Their eyesight's absolutely amazing, and they have some vision things that we didn't get in evolution. They have monocular and binocular vision. Our vision is monocular for the most part. They can focus one eye on something at a time, two different items, and focus close here and far away here. We can't do that. They do not have muscles to move their eyes in the socket. We do. And we have a limited range of motion with our neck. They can twirl their head about 340 degrees and then go all the way this way and then come back and go all the way that way. But their eyes don't move. They do have an extra eyelid. All predators do. And that's one of the distinctions between us and most predators in nature, is they have an extra eyelid called a nictitating membrane, and it's safety glasses, basically. So when they attack something, this very thin skin comes up, and you can see her blink. You see this white thing blink when I get close to her eyes. You see that little white flash? That's not her eyelid. It's this extra membrane. She has eyelids to close. But this membrane covers her eye to protect it. Sharks have it. They say, oh, that white eye rolls back in their head. It's not. It's a membrane to cover their eyes. Cats have it. Some other predators do. But their eyes are in the front of their head, so they could move their head around, but they can't see anything that's behind them. And they don't really care, generally.
And they sleep at night.
At night, they sleep with their eyes closed, and in the wild, red tails around here will sleep very close to the trunk of a tree. They're on a branch. They want to be right here because their number one predator in the wild are great horned owls. And a great horned owl will come right up behind her in the dark and take her right off a branch and eat her for breakfast. They're twice to 2.5 times her size and by far the number one predator in the woods. And they'll kill full-grown turkeys that weigh 15 pounds, 16 pounds without any trouble whatsoever. They are
So not necessarily at the top of the food chain.
Well, I mean, all raptors are at the top of the food chain, but there's always, the great white shark's at the top of his food chain, but we can kill a great white shark.
Right.
We're at the top of our food chain, but a lot of animals want to eat us in their environment. So, they are at the top of the chain, but there's always somebody bigger and badder.
Right.
What about our lifespan?
In the wild, 0 to 6, 7, 8 years is real good. Obviously, they get, there's some wear and tear involved. They get beat up. If anything happens to their eyes, one eye, then when they're attacking something, they come up short. If you think if you've ever gotten poked in the eye and worn an eye patch, you reach out and you're short, or you're to the left or the right because you're used to having two eyes do the work. They would be in a lot of trouble. As babies, about 40 or 50% die in the first year. Not for these guys. These guys have a much higher survival rate than most raptors because they live in a family pack. So they're not going to starve because somebody else is making a kill that they're going to get to share.
Right.
So they sort of like limp along for an extra year or two, where in the wild, mom and dad finish with them, and after 10 or 11 weeks, they just disappear. And then the babies starve to death. So a really high percentage die in the first year. But if they can live, they were a few years ago. There was 2 red tails trapped on the northern end of the Blue Ridge, and one of them was 18 years old, and one of them was 19 years old. They had been trapped and banded 18 and 19 years earlier. So they knew the number on the band. They looked it up, and it was they were 18 years old. That's probably really rare. That's not going to happen very much. If they get to be 9 or 10 years old, we saw a harris hawk like her, a male in the Seattle Zoo that was part of their bird show, and his name was Zorro. And he was 17 years old. And all the feathers around his face were gray.
Oh.
The whole edge of his face, his feathers were gray. That was pretty interesting. That's really rare, though. I've had back-to-back harrises that were 6 when they died.
Can you help Creed petting? I think he's ready.
You betcha. You're going to put your hand under my hand, okay? And you're going to come right up under my hand and you're going to touch it. How about that? Just whenever you're ready, however you want to do it.
May have to help him. Yeah, there you go.
It's okay.
Close, Creed.
Then, Wendy.
Yeah. So this area where my hand is right now, when you have chicken, the middle of the breastbone, that ridge, it's called the keel. It's right there. So then this little ridge right here, this top right here, is the wishbone, right? On the chicken, right there. And then that first stomach is right here. It's actually an expanded area of their
You want to see him at work?
squirrel.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be cool.
The dogs are inside, right?
Yep.
All right, Creed, you're going to get through this here, buddy.
See him right at the base of the tree?
corner now.
Markey, going down the hill. To the right.
I think I was in the wrong part. Look at me.
Taka, he's on the ground again.
Oh, yeah. No, right down here. She tried to get it. Wasn't she?
Now watch her go up the tree. It's called laddering. She goes this way, this way, this way, this way. Ho, 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 ho. Come on,
Oh.
Doc, get up. Come on, girl.
That was amazing. She gave that one up and found one that she thought was better, huh?
Yeah, this one is right here. It's gonna keep
Right.
I think it went under that.
Now that one's way up that tree. She won't go back after that one, huh? She's hunting. Looks like.
Huh? No, she just missed. Let's try something.
That one's still up in that. Yeah. Get him moving.
I get moving around. And then
It's like I'm tangled up. So he's hungry right now. He's
she's just got a, more than any Harris hawk that I've had, she's got a thing about squirrels. I mean, she's tough on them. She will not, and she's learned a whole bunch of tricks.
and she won't give up.
She doesn't give up. She'll go, like I said, at laddering. So the squirrel's here, and then finally gets up here, and she's here. She'll go to another tree, another tree, another tree, another tree. And once they get above them, then the squirrel has to bolt. Because hawks don't look up generally. She is now, but I mean, for the most part, they're looking down at stuff. So once they get above the squirrel, then they go, world goes nuts, and then the chase is back on.
Right.
It's pretty exciting. I mean, it's kind of fun.
Oh, this is cool, man.
Something